Okay, joining me live now is Nationals leader David Littleproud. David, thanks so much for your time. I want to start on the polling today. What should we make of it?
Well, it's not good. I mean, you don't have to be a mathematician to see that. The reality is, I think what it also shows is that the Australian people are angry. They're not happy with anybody, overwhelmingly supporting anybody, because I think we've all identified the problem. Our country's going backwards socially, economically. But what they want and need is solutions. And I think this is where policy focus, it's great to identify, and One Nation and others can identify the problem easily, but you've got to be able to have cogent policies that governments can enact, a real government can enact. And that's where I think the instruction to the coalition is to focus on what the solution is. They're looking for the solutions. They've all identified the problems. They're seeing that bled out of their wallets every month when their energy bill comes in, every week when they go to the grocery bill. That's what they're seeing, and that's what they want to see leadership on, is how do we solve that? What are the solutions that will give them back their standard of living? A standard of living that has gone back to 2011 standards. Some young people would only just be coming into their work life and never known what that was or remember what that was. So, and it's going to take us nearly 20 years to get us back on current growth rates to even to where we were pre-COVID. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that's around solution. There's the opportunity. There's an instructive message, a very instructive message, and it would be unwise to ignore it. But there's an opportunity there to focus on the solutions and say to the Australian people, these are what the solutions that a cogent government can deliver.
Do you put these numbers in part down to the fact that there was so much chaos and animosity, and there was this breakup between the Nationals and the Liberals, and it wouldn't have taken into account the reunification last night?
Oh, I just think we've been on a trend that we need to focus on the solutions, and I think that's what the Australian people is. I think it's time for us as a coalition to catch up, because I think the Australian people really do understand what they're upset about, and I think they don't need us to continue to identify that. And
do you think both you and Susan Lee were marked down because you couldn't get it together and you'd split? And many people, can't you put that down to partly the numbers?
Well, I'll get to that. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that wasn't, but what were we to do? We came and we were asked to vote on a bill in a matter of hours around freedom of speech, those hate speech laws. We weren't afforded the time to be able to undertake that, nor an internal coalition process to be able to actually debate that. And so we got to a position we weren't comfortable with. And so we had a very difficult choice to make as a national party. But we came here to actually vote on our principles and our values. That's what people sent us here. And that goes to the very heart of what I've just been talking about, where the polls are. They want their politicians to go to Canberra, to stand up for what they believe, and they want to see that. They want to see the colour of their eyes and how they vote, and what they vote on, and what they're prepared to do for the people they represent. And I'm proud of everyone in my party room that had the courage. It was a difficult decision, but we did it because we believed in it, and we made it very clear. We left on principle, but we came back on principle, that the fact that those shadow ministers were reinstated, but we put in place processes that will ensure this never happens again. And we'd be hypocritical if we stayed out of the coalition after Susan Lee granted all that. So we did the right thing. We've lived by our principles and values as a national party through difficult times. But we've done it with dignity, and with respect and integrity all the way through.
What's to say, though, that you won't split from the Liberal Party again? There is nothing in what you've agreed with Susan Lee that guarantees that.
Yes, there is. I've just articulated and now
guarantee?
changed the process. Well, the guarantee is that we get our voice heard. I mean, that's why we come to Canberra, and so that the ultimate determinant of a bill will be the joint party room. This bill never went to the joint party room, where we were afforded an opportunity
not shadow cabinet
to debate.
Or cabinet solidarity. It's the joint party rooms. So there's party room solidarity now.
The joint party room always overrides the decision of everybody. That is the ultimate body where both the Liberal Party and the National Party can bring their ideas and put them through shadow cabinet. But it is joint party room that makes that
what happens in joint party room then, David, if I can? So if there is so the hate speech laws go before the joint party room, is there going to be a vote on every single piece of legislation? Is it 51% rules?
That's what democracy is, Laura. You've got to get 50 plus one. The reality is that if you put that, and you're afforded the opportunity to debate it. This is the whole principle.
Yeah, but I put it to you that if these hate speech laws were put to the joint party room, which I thought it was really unusual at the time that they wouldn't, it probably would have been the majority, would it not?
I don't know. So unless you can actually have a debate and ruminate that with the collective wisdom of both the Liberal Party and the National Party.
Would you like to test that again then? Because this is really crucial, because you and I both know that you can't have the perfect be the enemy of the good in politics, because you will get nothing done. I accept that there are people that have more passionate views, but you can't be running a coalition where the loudest voices win. Do you agree with that?
No, and that's exactly why you allow the collective to come together. That loud voices, whether they be majority or minority, that they are given the opportunity to ruminate it, to debate it in a forum that allows the best outcome to be achieved, and then you accept the outcome. That is all the National Party's asked, and that's what the National Party now has guaranteed.
So David, just to be very clear on this, for every joint party room meeting and for, contentious legislation or even non-contentious legislation, will there be a vote and numbers counted? Because it's my understanding, and perhaps I'm wrong in this, that there's not a vote on every piece of legislation that comes before party room. There's a discussion in the room, people make their views known on things, but there's not always been a vote. Are you saying that has now completely changed, that on every piece of legislation that you are considering in the parliament as a coalition, there will be a vote in joint party room?
No, Laura, what I'm saying is you use common sense on contentious issues, that if it gets to that, then obviously as a collective we work through where the majority is, and but normally I think in the non-contentious we don't have to do that, Laura. We're adults and that's how we operate. That's how the coalition has operated. But on contentious issues, and we've had them even during my time, like same-sex marriage, where we've worked through it as a collective and got to a position, and ultimately it's pretty easy to work out where the majority sit, and that's where there's mechanisms in place. But you don't need to vote on every bill, but every bill should go before the joint party room, but particularly the most contentious ones, where it touches on the values and principles of our two individual parties, and if they don't align, then that's the best way to solve it. And then if you lose, well, you've got to accept the fact that you weren't able to debate your side strongly enough to win the day, and you've got to accept and get on with the decision of the collective. And that's what the National Party's been prepared to do, so long as we're afforded that opportunity to have that debate, to have that forum. That's all the National Party's ever asked for. I don't think we haven't tried to be, anything unreasonable in this. We've been reasonable all the way through, and when you get a bill, at 6:18 in the morning and expect to vote on it as far-reaching as hate speech laws that go to the freedom of speech of every Australian, I just don't think that's good governance, not necessarily from us, but from the Albanese government. Why would you bring in a bill that has overreach, that potentially takes away freedom of speech of Australians, and not scrutinise it to the extent of which legislators should? That's not good governance, and that was more about Anthony Albanese looking for a political win than he was about doing the right thing.
I mean, but you were there when Susan Lee was calling all summer with your support for Parliament to be recalled. Then Parliament was recalled and it appeared that you weren't ready.
No, I'll disagree with that, Laura. I agree. Susan Lee did the right thing by saying come back to Parliament. In fact, part of that bill was, in fact, to increase the powers of the Immigration Minister. But what you could have done before Christmas is start up a legislative process to look at the necessity of this bill, a complex bill about hate speech that should have started before Christmas. And we would have been able to give the Immigration Minister those powers to deport people immediately, which we all supported. But what they could have done is that process that respected the Parliament, respected the Australian people and their right to freedom of speech, that could have started before Christmas. And that's what the National Party had been prosecuting, and so too had the Liberal Party.
Okay. So coming back to my original question, I think there's a lot of loyal voters for your party and for the Liberal Party that are looking at the rabble of the last couple of weeks and, quite frankly, months, and thinking, There's no guarantees they won't do this again. What do you say to them today?
Well, we can prove that through our actions, focusing on the solutions. But the reality is that we have negotiated to ensure that there are mechanisms that our voice is heard. And I think our supporters and I think the Australian people would expect that if you're elected to Parliament, that you're charged with the responsibility of coming down here and shaping this country, that you should have a voice. That you shouldn't be expected just to come and to toe the line, but to be able to argue that if you lose, well, you've at least had that opportunity. And that's all the National Party's ever asked for. We've never been unreasonable in any of this. And I think much of the commentary that's come out of Canberra has portrayed the National Party as just troublemakers. But we're not a faction of the Liberal Party. We have a responsibility to the people. We work constructively in a coalition. Yeah. So long as we get a voice, then the National Party's happy. We have to be able to have that opportunity. And now that we've secured that, we're comfortable.
But there's going to be some issues that you feel more passionately about. I'm thinking, you know, abandoning net zero targets for 2050. I get that that's kind of a...
We've already agreed on that.
I know you have, but before the next election, say it comes up again, and then the moderates want to push for, you know, a recommitment to 2050 or targets down the track. You know, is that an ideological red line for you? If that was put to a vote in joint party, and for some reason those 2050 targets were agreed to for political reasons, for wanting to win back those city seats, just all a hypothetical, of course, David. What would be, would the Nationals really accept that would be the position of a joint party room?
Well, that's the process that we've agreed to.
Okay.
And that's what we're all adhering to. But Laura, let me tell you that we're not walking away from reductions emissions. That's why we got to an eminently sensible position on net zero.
But you know what I'm talking about. There are going to be other issues that come up where the factions of both of your parties don't agree. So, you know, I think people are worried that the tantrum or throwing the toys out of the pram might happen again if it's a red line issue. And look, sorry, I don't mean to diminish your position, because I know this has been really difficult.
Well, you do by saying that. Yeah. But Laura, with all due respect, by saying that we had a tantrum disrespects the motives in which the National Party undertook this. Now, if you're elected to Parliament and you're not given a voice on something as free speech, I mean, that is the commentary that's come from Canberra about the National Party. I think the Australian people would expect their representatives to go down there and stand for something. That's, I think, what some of the polls are saying. We want to know what you stand for.
Okay.
And I think for this commentary that's come from Canberra that
but on contentious such as hate speech, what else would come under the contentious legislation kind of banner to have an actual vote in joint party room, do you think?
Laura?
Yeah, right.
And how much does society shift? What we've said is that while you want to continue to put confusion out there, there is no confusion in our mind. We've agreed to a process. We've been able to negotiate a process that gives us a voice.
I want anything but confusion, trust me, because our viewers really want this to be clear. But I think we understand what you're saying. For contentious issues, a joint party room, there'll be a vote. You need to be heard on that. If you're outside of shadow cabinet, you still reserve the right to abstain or cross the floor in Parliament without consequence. But if you are in shadow cabinet, there's party room and cabinet solidarity.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not rocket science. It's something we're prepared to accept, and that's the responsibility of being in the executive of a coalition. Okay.
At the risk of pushing you even further here, David, of course you've made this agreement with Susan Lee. Now, I wouldn't at all, after what we've seen over the last 3 weeks, get you to comment on who the Liberal Party leader might be. But the agreement you've made with Susan Lee, is that just with Susan Lee? If there was to be another Liberal Party leader, might things change?
No, those coalition agreements transcend leaderships of both parties, and that's what we've been able to get, and that gives the surety to both parties that we can continue on. So that's why we've got comfort, and you know that's why we came back. We've acted with principle in why we left, but if we didn't accept what Susan Lee had offered, then we're not showing those principles. We would have been hypocritical to say, well, we've got what we asked for and we're going to stay outside. No, we're going to be adults. We're going to live by the integrity and the respect that we've shown through this process, as difficult as it was, to make sure that there's certainty and continuity for our coalition to go to the next election with and beyond.
David, I appreciate it. Always have good conversations with you, and I know you understand that I've got to ask these questions. I know they're annoying at times, but never rude. I promise you that.
You.
Oh, yeah, right.
No, exactly.
Yeah, right. All right, David, we'll speak next week. Appreciate it.
Thank you.